Right now, your hand is probably touching something, a phone, a desk, a chair, maybe your own face, because now you are thinking about it. It feels solid, it feels obvious, it feels like your skin is making direct contact with the world. And in everyday life, that is true enough. But at the level of atoms, the tiny building blocks that make up everything around you, something much stranger is happening. Your hand is not really touching the table. The atoms in your hand and the atoms in the table are getting close enough to push each other away. What you feel as touch is not contact, it is resistance, which means your entire life has been one long series of extremely convincing almost touches. Let's start with the normal version. You place your hand on a table. Your nerves send signals to your brain. Your brain says, that is a table. Very helpful, very professional, no complaints. But if we zoom in far enough, the table stops looking like a flat surface. Your hand stops looking like a hand. And everything becomes atoms. Atoms have a tiny center called a nucleus. Around that nucleus are electrons, which are tiny charged particles. You may have seen drawings where electrons look like little planets orbiting a sun. That image is useful for a classroom poster. It is also not exactly what is happening. Electrons are better understood as existing in clouds of probability. That means we do not picture them as tiny balls moving in clean circles. We picture regions where the electron is likely to be found, which is less neat and much harder to put on a children's placemat. So when your hand gets close to the table, the electron clouds in your hand get close to the electron clouds in the table. And electrons are negatively charged. Negative charges repel other negative charges. They push away from each other, like two magnets turned the wrong way, except smaller and everywhere. That pushback is part of what you experience as solidity. Your hand does not sink through the table because the particles in your hand and the particles in the table resist being shoved into each other's space. The table pushes back, your hand pushes back. Your brain receives that pressure and says, touch. And honestly, that is good enough most of the time. If your brain stopped every moment to explain quantum mechanics before letting you pick up a coffee mug, society would collapse by breakfast. But the deeper reason matter stays solid is not only electric repulsion. There is also something called the Pauli exclusion principle. That sounds like a rule invented by someone who got tired of sharing an office, but it is one of the most important ideas in physics. The simple version is this. Certain particles, including electrons, cannot occupy the exact same quantum state at the same time. A quantum state is basically the full set of details that describes what a particle is doing. So electrons cannot all pile into the same state like people ignoring seat numbers at a family reunion. There are rules. This matters because it helps explain why atoms take up space. It helps explain why matter has structure. It helps explain why your chair does not politely allow your body to pass through it. Without these rules, the world would not behave like the world. Solidity is not just a surface being hard. It is fields, charges, and quantum rules all saying, no, not there. Firmly, repeatedly, at every scale that matters to your body. Now this is where the phrase, you never actually touch anything, needs a small warning label. Because it depends on what you mean by touch. If by touch you mean direct contact, in the sense of two solid little balls bumping into each other, then no, that is not really what atoms are doing. Atoms are not tiny marbles knocking together in a bag. They are mostly empty space, structured by forces and quantum behavior. But if by touch you mean two things interacting physically, then yes, you are touching things all the time. The atoms in your hand and the atoms in the table are absolutely interacting. They are just not touching in the simple, everyday picture we carry around in our heads. So the most accurate version is not, nothing ever touches anything, and therefore reality is fake. Reality is fine, probably. The better version is, touch is not what it feels like like contact. But underneath that feeling is interaction. Forces, fields, repulsion, nerves translating pressure into experience. Your body is not lying to you, it is summarizing. And that summary is useful. When you sit in a chair, you do not need to know about electron clouds. You just need the chair to remain loyal. And most chairs do. That is the beauty of this. The physics underneath daily life is extremely strange, but daily life still works. You can still hold a cup, you can still lean on a wall, you can still stub your toe and learn very quickly that matter has opinions. But the reason those things feel solid is not because everything is packed full from edge to edge. Atoms are mostly empty space. If an atom were blown up to the size of a stadium, the nucleus would be tiny compared to the whole structure. Most of the atom would be open space. That sounds like it should make everything ghostly. It does not, because the empty space is not empty in the casual way we imagine. It is governed by electric fields, quantum rules, and particles that do not simply let other particles move through them. So when someone says, if atoms are mostly empty space, why can't I walk through a wall? The answer is, because the wall is not just empty space, and neither are you. Your electrons and the wall's electrons push back. The Pauli exclusion principle prevents particles from simply collapsing into the same states, and the combined result is a wall that remains very committed to being a wall. You may test this if you like. The wall will win. Now, technically, quantum physics has a strange little concept called tunneling. Quantum tunneling is when a particle has a chance to pass through a barrier that, in ordinary physics, it should not cross. Tiny particles can do this. It is real. It matters in physics, it matters in technology, but before anyone gets excited and runs toward drywall, the odds of a whole human tunneling through a wall are so small that impossible is the practical answer. Not mathematically zero, just close enough that your landlord does not need to worry. So yes, at the smallest scales, reality is weirder than our senses suggest. But no, you are not about to phase through your kitchen. The kitchen remains safe from your quantum ambition. What makes this so fascinating is that touch feels like one of the most direct things we do. Seeing can be tricked, hearing can be misled. Memory is basically a group project with missing notes, but touch feels honest. You press your hand on the table and there it is. Solid, immediate, real. And it is real, just not simple. Touch is your nervous system's interpretation of physical interaction. Pressure receptors in your skin detect force. Those signals travel through nerves. Your brain builds a sensation. By the time you feel the table, your body has already translated a microscopic pushback into a personal experience. That is what your senses do. They do not show you reality raw. They give you a version you can use, a fast version, a useful version, a version that lets you move through the world without needing a physics degree to open a door. And that is good, because raw reality is not user-friendly. Your brain is not here to give you a complete documentary on atomic structure every time you pick up a spoon. It is here to keep you alive, moving, fed, and occasionally humble, so it gives you touch. A clean, simple feeling for something deeply complicated. It says, here is the table, not, here is a massive collection of atoms whose electron clouds are resisting overlap due to electromagnetic interaction and quantum restrictions. That would be accurate. It would also make conversation impossible. So the next time your hand rests on a desk, remember what is happening underneath the obvious. You are not pressing against a perfectly solid block of stuff. You are interacting with fields and particles. Your electrons are meeting the table's electrons and both sides are refusing to share space. Your nerves are turning that refusal into feeling. Your brain is calling it touch. And for daily life, that is close enough. But underneath it, the truth is much stranger. You have never touched the world the way you thought you did. You have only felt it pushing back. Weirdly true, weirdly sketchy.